Alright, I am at Roman numeral 7, letter F, Kingdom of the Congo. Kingdom of Congo. Okay, now, so, I talked to you a little bit on the last video about the Kingdom of Songhai, which was kind of in decline, it was kind of breaking up, and that facilitated the slave trade even more out of Africa. Kingdom of Congo is a little bit different of a different story. If you look on the map on page 365, you see the Congo or Zaire River. The Congo River was the original name. Zaire became the name in the 20th century. Now it's back to the Congo River. So the actual name today is the Congo River. But that is the heart of the Kingdom of Congo. Kingdom of Congo was a very big, very powerful empire in a very tropical jungle region. Now, you normally don't see very big empires in these types of regions. Usually the societies are rather small because it's very difficult to build a big political unit in such a difficult climate to live in. However, it happened with the Kingdom of the Congo. It was a very wealthy, very powerful kingdom. It had a lot of people under its control. The Portuguese came there. 1484 was when the first Portuguese established trading post was located there. The Portuguese brought Catholic missionaries with them, and those Catholic missionaries were very effective in converting the Congolese people to Catholicism. Okay, so you saw a big influx of Catholic and European philosophy in the Kingdom of Congo. Okay, now the Portuguese soon began exporting slaves from Congo. The Congolese didn't have a problem with it. The Portuguese actually fought alongside the Congolese military to conquer some other territories. Okay, so the Portuguese and the Congolese are really quite close. And the Portuguese are buying slaves from the Congolese, and they get along just fine. Everything seems to be going well. Well, eventually, the slave trade, the exportation of slaves from Congo, became too much for the Congolese government to accept. And they refused to sell any more slaves to the Portuguese. However, what happened then was a black market slave trade. Okay, the government was no longer selling slaves to the Congolese. However, individuals were, and they would interact with the Portuguese and trade. And eventually what happened, the trade usually was a trade between slaves for either guns or alcohol. Guns and alcohol are both very destructive elements of a society. So as these guns and alcohol are introduced to the Kingdom of the Congo in exchange for slaves, what we see is a depopulation of the region. We see huge decline in the number of people, especially able-bodied young men in the region of the Congo, but at the same time we see some members of that society gaining a whole lot of force in firearms and guns. And at the same time we see a very kind of a negative effect, the negative effects of alcohol, because alcoholism becomes a problem in the Kingdom of the Congo. And you know, when people are addicted to alcohol, they tend to, just as if they were addicted to any other drug, they tend to be less focused, less loyal to their governments, less dedicated to what the good things of life are, like, you know, developing a strong, established society, being good members of that society, being productive members of that society. All that kind of goes away with alcohol, especially in this situation. You know, it's kind of sad that the Congolese, they really took to this alcohol thing, and it was very destructive to their society. All of a sudden, with the guns especially, the people of the region, the Kingdom of Congo, are much less concerned with what their king wants. The king, the title of the king was Mbanza Congo. I'm not holding you accountable for any of these spellings or anything like that, by the way. Also, I don't hold you accountable for dates unless I specifically tell you you need to know a date for sure. Like that 1484 thing when the Portuguese first came to the Congolese. I'm not going to ask you that question on a test, because sometimes people get kind of hung up on dates and they miss the real importance of history. So I'm not going to do it to you. Anyway, so the people stopped listening and stopped being concerned with Mbanza Congo. They cared less about the king of Congo and more about the guy in their neighborhood who had the guns. And what we see is the development is kind of a warlord mentality of politics in Congo. the person that you respect, the person that you honor, the person that you give your loyalty to is not the king or the government overall. It's the guy in town with the guns, the guy who lives down the block with the guns, because he's the only one that can keep you safe, and at the same time, he's the guy who can kill you if you don't go along with what he wants. Okay, so we see a very disruptive effect, and by the mid 17th century, that is the 1650s, we see the Kingdom of Congo kind of fall into a collapse as a civil war. It fell upon itself. It wasn't that the Portuguese swept in and conquered the Congolese. The Congolese divided and conquered them and destroyed themselves. But the Portuguese were there to reap the benefits all the time by purchasing and exporting slaves from whoever was winning that battle on that day. Very sad story. When we think about Africa and we think about what Africa is today, it has a lot to do with the things that I'm talking about now. It has a lot to do with the disruption that was caused by the Atlantic slave trade. That is the slave trade to the Americas from Africa. Okay, other European influences, letter G. We also see, I've mentioned the Portuguese. They came first in contacting African societies. Along come the Dutch, and they do the same thing. You know, they're trading guns and alcohol for slaves. Next thing you know, along come the French and the English, and the Spanish not so much. The Spanish don't really trade directly in Africa very much at all. They never really claimed much territory in Africa, but all these others did. The French did, the English did, the Dutch did, and the Portuguese did. And they're all doing the same thing. They're all taking what is valuable in Africa and exploiting these valuable things, taking them out of the continent for their own wealth. Now, the British did hit upon a little gold there along the coast, the Guinea coast of Africa. You can't really see that. If you look where it says Mossy States on 365, okay, today that is a country called Ghana. Okay, it used to be a place called Gold Coast that the British referred to it. Wait, I think I have a map with that on there. But the British got lucky and they found a place where there was gold. Okay, 451. You can look on 451 and find this map where the Gold Coast is located, and it is kind of in a dark orange color. There along the Gold Coast, the British run into a group of folks called the they run into a group of folks called the Asante Empire, which is an empire. An empire is an expanding kingdom, but not nearly as big as the Kingdom of Congo. But they come across the Asante Empire, who did have large deposits of gold. When the gold ran out, it did not take very long for the British to claim all that gold from those folks. When the gold ran out, guess what they're after next? That's right, slaves. The Asante were known especially for enslaving this other group called the Fanti people. Okay, so we see that other Europeans get involved and do the same thing that the Dutch and the Portuguese did in Africa in exploiting the people and the societies there. Now letter H, last one on this video, last one on this Roman numeral 7. Letter H is the effects on Africa. What happened in Africa as a result of all these things is really a total destruction of African societies. Okay, we see everything start to fall apart. Africa was not as advanced in any way as European societies, but we see that European societies, with their influx of the slave trade, brought great dependence in Africa on things like guns and alcohol, and at the same time it depopulated the region. People mean money. You know, if you got more people in a society, you've got more potential for making money. The British take that away, not just the British, but all the Europeans in trading slaves to Africa take all that away from Africa and have a very devastating effect that can still be seen today. Okay? So a lot of the problems, in a nutshell, a lot of the problems you see in Africa today about chaotic governments and about social disruption kind of have their root in this African slave trade. Okay? I'm out of time on this one. I'll pick up with Roman numeral 8 on the next video.